So let me start with this. If you're a leader and you don't want to make change, you're not an effective leader. Simple. If you don't embrace change, you're not a leader. So every time you interrupt a service technician, you're wasting payroll, you're wasting production, and you're not getting things done, and you're increasing overtime. Stop interrupting them. Give them the tools that they need. Give them the training that they need, because the only thing that will happen when you have everything that you need and all the training that you need is you're going to do things better.
When you don't compete on value, you will be competing on price. And that's what it is. That's what makes the difference between a Chick-fil-A and many other brands, right?
My own daughter recently got her own apartment, and she said, "Dad, I will pay more to live here." The supervisor stopped his golf cart, got out in the parking lot, introduced himself. He had no idea who we were, and all he said was his name. "I just wanted to say hello, and I hope you live here. If you do, I will be the person knocking on your door." Yeah, the thing is, if you're serious about business, how could you not train your people? You can talk all you want. You can be articulate. You could be the most sophisticated, charismatic person in a room. In 6 months, nobody cares unless you deliver.
A hard to swallow pill, right? And I'm gonna say this: learning management systems don't teach you anything. The way the information is being delivered, it's not how we want to learn. Why are the operators buying software without talking to the people that are actually using it?
You know, that is something that baffles me.
Mark, great to have you back.
Thanks for having me, Adrian. I'm glad to be back. I enjoy our conversations.
Likewise, and it's been a long time. Last time we had one podcast was at Blueprint, and unfortunately, everything went up in flames. I didn't get audio, so not much of a news with us, being muted. So we were talking about the survey that you did in collaboration with Sweet Bunny. So I want you to give me like a high level view of what was about, what you tried to accomplish, and what were kind of like the top findings there.
Sure. So the study, I'm very proud of this. It's the first one that's ever been done nationally, and we have a tremendous response. Well over 1,000 uh, respondents, 22 companies. And what I like in particular about this survey is it went to the technicians in the field, and they knew that the results couldn't be reverse engineered to figure out the origin of them. So, in my opinion, and our findings, the technicians were far more honest with the feedback that they gave and the surveys and the ratings. So it touched on a few things: technology, turnover, office staff, training, what is going well, what really needs attention, and what was sort of in the middle. So the findings, I'll tell you what, if anyone is watching this and they really think to themselves, I want data that I can act on from a large data set, then this is it. This is what we're talking about today, because there's never been anything like this. It's the most successful survey ever done for the maintenance and service departments. And if anyone is serious about change, these numbers will help them make change in the right direction.
Super excited to dig deeper, but I also wanted to go deeper on specific comments that specific people have made,
Sure.
because although they might not be showing in the numbers, I think they're incredibly relevant for the situation that our industry in. And honestly, I had to say they're not flattering for the state of the industry. But at the same time, if we don't make it uncomfortable not to talk about these issues, we can really have an expectation that things will improve. So this conversation, it's on purpose that to make it uncomfortable not to talk about these issues anymore. And I know you're game for it, and let's dig right into it.
Yeah. So let me start with this. If you're a leader and you don't want to make change, you're not an effective leader. Simple. If you don't embrace change, you're not a leader. You're in protection mode, right? So survival mode, not thrive mode. And then the numbers don't lie. I mean, it's really simple. So we will go over some numbers. I think that might make some people uncomfortable, with the purpose of making them move and take action with purpose that makes the right change. So yeah, we'll get into it. You fire away, Adrian, and it's my pleasure. And anyone that wants this survey, that study, they can have it.
We gotta make sure, Mark, that in a show notes, we're gonna put the survey results, right? The link for them so they could access it themselves and process it in any way they might deem useful for themselves and for their groups, for the companies they work for.
Perfect.
So based on what we're seeing in a survey, looks like 2/3 of the technicians get less than an hour of training per month. Now, by comparison with leasing, which gets Grace Hill, onboarding, leasing coaching, why does the person that keeps the building running get the least investment?
So there's a few perceptions. One, most often, and of course there's variables around this, but most often the service department is viewed as a liability, something that costs money, not something that generates revenue. The office is typically seen as something that generates revenue, minimizes liability, and then, by the way, we have this department called maintenance that we have to pay for. And so the companies that get it, if you look at the top performing companies, they understand the direct link to excellent in-field service relationships and experiences, and how people are much more comfortable paying more and staying longer where the service department is on point. And we have to get away from the idea that the maintenance team is just a group of handyman people or service workers, and start treating them like partners in success for the property, for the company, for the region, and overall the team, the company as a whole. So I would just start with that idea, just moving away. And the next thing I'd like to ask everyone to do when they hear these numbers and look at them is, it's not just about the explicit data. What does the number say? If you're really savvy at businesses, what message and meaning am I supposed to get from the data so I know what changes to make? And that's the purpose of our conversation today. You can't say you want to make change and avoid statistics and information. If you want to make change, though, you have to really understand the meaning of the numbers, and that's where we come in.
I think the hardest time that is out there for someone in our trade is to how to articulate that we could actually make company money, save company money. We're not just like an expense line item, right? And I'm going to ask you directly, how do we change the narrative? What does someone need to do in order to better articulate the case for maintenance as being a profit center, not just an expense?
Okay, so here's the challenge, and this is where it happens most often. A business person thinks in a language of data, money, statistics, P&L, and a customer thinks in terms of convenience and experience. And a technician thinks in convenience of managing their workload and completing tasks. So they're basically speaking different languages. But I'll put this in example. If you take your service department and you average out the payroll per minute, do you want to waste that money, or do you want to spend that money wisely? And if you give them the resources, they don't waste time, which is a valuable asset. So if you are in the field, or you're managing a property or a regional, and you can communicate how the business decision is affected, the business success is affected by what happens in the field, it's a lot easier. And I'll give you an example. I'll jump ahead and come back. The average technician, to over 2/3 of them, is interrupted 5 to 6 times a day. Well, that's ridiculous. And that means that many more are interrupted more often than that. But if you average someone at $20, that means it's 33 cents a minute that they earn. They're getting paid. If your interruption has a minimum of a 23-minute interruption where you can return back to what you were doing, now, let's just say that's actually being very conservative, but let's say 23 minutes. At 33 cents a minute, 250 days is $1,800 a year you lose in payroll just for interrupting them once a day, and I didn't mean to. If that's 5 times a day, it's $11,000 or more per year, depending on what they make. So every time you interrupt a service technician, you're wasting payroll, you're wasting production, and you're not getting things done, and you're increasing overtime. If they don't have the resources, that delay period gets increased. So if you want to maximize the production and the efficiency and proficiency of your service department, stop interrupting them. Give them the tools that they need. Give them the training that they need, because the only thing that will happen when you have everything that you need and all the training that you need is you're going to do things better, faster, in less time, as long as it doesn't affect the quality. And all of those lead to the better experience with the resident, who is going to feel much more comfortable paying more for their rent and their services. And for example, if you go to Chick-fil-A and the sandwiches went up 25 cents, nobody shrugs. Like, okay. But if people are really focused on the price way too much, that's the thing that they focus on. They're going to go to a different customer. Like one customer base would complain about that 25% increase, and one of them would just shrug it off and keep buying chicken sandwiches. And so it's really important for the owners to understand that resources lead to time efficiency. Time efficiency, most often with good personnel, leads to a good experience, and all of those will generate and stabilize more income.
Let's go back to Chick-fil-A, because you provided a great example. You said if they bump up the price 25 cents, nobody bats an eye. It's great, right?
No.
But in other instances, people will raise hell for 5 cents. And I think that comes from the fact that when you don't compete on value, you will be competing on price. And that's what it is. That's what makes the difference between a Chick-fil-A and many other brands, right? Most brands compete on price, and brands like Chick-fil-A compete on value, because the perceived value is like so high that people wouldn't mind paying more. Do you disagree here?
Yeah, and their service, they actually track your vehicle when you order online. You can watch your own car move on the app, and then you pull up and you get a hot meal. Now, my own daughter recently got her own apartment, and she said, Dad, I will pay more to live here. The supervisor stopped his golf cart, got out in the parking lot, introduced himself. He had no idea who we were, and all he said was his name. I just wanted to say hello, and I hope you live here. If you do, I will be the person knocking on your door. And she was so excited with that, because the other two properties were kind of on their phone and they had glitches in the technology, and they were slightly dismissive and delayed in addressing her, and they talked to me more than her, which was a mistake. But the supervisor that stopped his golf cart and hopped out is the one that convinced her she should pay a couple of $100 more in rent per month to live there.
Back to the ownership side, right? How do we convince the owners that we're actually a value proposition here? So if I was to ask you, Mark, come up with a 60-second pitch that we will use to convince the owners that there's ROI in maintenance, right? That actually there's quantifiable stuff. How would you build that particular pitch?
So what I challenge every owner to do is go look at the top company in every single metric that you can find and see what they have in common. They have excellent leadership, excellent communication, excellent organization, excellent allocation of resources. Their communication is crystal clear and concise, and everybody knows where their authorities are, the decision lines and everything that they're responsible for, and how to do it, what they can and can't do. The other thing that you'll notice is those companies financially are more successful. And I can tell you this, I know this as a consultant for over 22 years. If your company gets training, they win more than companies that don't. There's not a single team that has the least amount of training that wins. There's not a single organization with poor leadership, poor communication, poor organization that wins. So you have to have all of these. If you're serious about managing a property and making it profitable, and as profitable as possible, you have to manage your team and invest in them, because they now will reciprocate and be more likely to invest in you. But if you're constantly making them survive in crisis mode and they're getting overwhelmed, they're surviving, they're not thriving, they're not driving the business. Last thing I'll say, if you're, as a business owner, teach your team through training how to successfully manage and run your business, they're much more likely to do so. If you don't, they're less likely.
So you said this to me a while back on a number of occasions. Teams that don't train don't win. Let's look at the sports teams, right?
Sure.
Do you really expect a sports team to be successful if they don't train? No, absolutely not. It's kind of a no-brainer, right? Why we should we even be asking a question? And that's the reason why most sport teams are better ran than most businesses, because they train a heck of a lot, right? in comparison with businesses. And if we gonna compare them up against multifamily businesses, I think sport teams win by a lot.
Yeah, the thing is, if you're serious about business, how could you not train your people? So here's the thing, and we say this all the time about leadership. It's in deeds, not words. You can talk all you want. You can be articulate. You could be the most sophisticated, charismatic person in a room. In 6 months, nobody cares unless you deliver. And this is an issue with retention and why people leave. It's one of the main reasons is the environment, the way their boss treats them, and the way people talk to them on the team. Those are the top three. And so if you use a sports team analogy, now we run our businesses slightly different, but it's an organization, it's a team, it's a culture, it's a vibe. Standards are not personal. You don't make them personal, you don't take them personal. You as an owner either give people what they need or you don't. Now you can hold them accountable, and they should be. And here's the thing, if you give every single person on your team everything they need, training, resources, there's not a single excuse or scapegoat left. The only thing now is their individual performance and collective performance, and you'll know right away.
I have a hard one here.
Sure.
It's kind of a hard to swallow pill, right? And I'm gonna say this: learning management systems don't teach you anything.
No.
No. Explain. Seems like you're agreeing with my statement. Why don't they?
So here's the deal. And so learning management systems alone manage content, right? They're supposed to enhance performance, not replace knowledge and skills. They're supposed to improve knowledge and build skills. And then you need after training application in the field. And what that looks like is the culture of the team helping each other, working with each other. You learn something, you pick something up. So what happens is people manage content instead of improve behaviors and perspectives in the field. And we all have content and we're supposed to put it out, and it is helpful, but you need more support than that. So let me know if I'm on the right track with this answer to your question. But the system alone and the process alone is supposed to help. It's supposed to plug the person in, but they still need mentorship. They still need coaching. They still need leadership. They still need management and ownership. You can't just drop a platform and expect it to suddenly completely turn your company around. It takes a couple years to do that. And technologies and platforms and management systems are supposed to improve performance. And the people in the field are supposed to improve the experience. But the people internally are supposed to have a good experience from their ownership and management. And I think that's the biggest component that's missing.
I think the LMS doesn't even do the first thing that you mentioned, right? Like actually helping improve. I will explain, and I'll really like for you to,
Sure.
Share if you agree or disagree with this. The way the information is being delivered, it's not how we want to learn. The way it's been typically delivered is like you had to sit in front of a computer screen to watch content, try to memorize, just memorize it good enough so you could pass the test at the end of the conversation of the class, just so you could forget it the very next minute after that. And that actually does happen. Like you pass the test, and the very next minute, by the next day, you don't remember anything, barely anything.
So let me say this. Memorization is the lowest form of learning. What we need is understanding that can provide application. I think we agree on that. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. And then there's the other side of the coin where somebody watching will say, well, yeah, but what's better to replace this current way of learning, right? And most people will say in person is the best type of training, and I'm with that crowd. I will say that that's mostly of what I've learned in maintenance. I watched others doing it, and then I had the opportunity to get my hands on and fix it. So in person has been to me the most powerful and the best way to learn. Others learn other ways, but let's just focus on, I guess, how people get answers to their questions today. And I'm gonna use myself as an example, right? I don't want to generalize, but I would like your take on this as well. So if I'm looking to find an answer about how to fix a toilet, I never fixed the toilet, right? Or how to fix a stove, what I will probably start doing is to pick up my phone, take a picture of the issue, take a picture of the model number, upload it to ChatGPT, and ask the question. My stove burner isn't working. This is what I'm looking at. This is the model. Please, walk me through some possible issues and solutions. Like what could possibly be the problem and what could possibly be the answer to that. Is this something that you're seeing, or is this something that you're personally experiencing yourself in learning? Is this how you're learning currently?
Well, I see it all over. So there's a couple things. So let me just say this: Gen X, I'm in Gen X. We're pushing 60. The major amount of trades, knowledge, and skills that can be passed on to the future generations is going to very much disappear in the next 5 years. If you started today learning, it might take 3 to 5 years to get at a moderate level of proficiency. Now, when you look at the your phone for assistance, it can help, but here's the deal: you have to have very trusted resources. Nothing replaces a human being sitting down with you and showing you how to do something. Now, if you look on your phone and say people use YouTube, there are a lot of videos on YouTube that show you how to do things incorrectly. As a joke, they're trolling people. I saw one where they said put motor oil in your windshield washer fluid because it helps keeps insects off the windshield. And I thought, my goodness, you know what? Someone will do that. And they will. So the perspective is, let's maximize our efficiencies and we'll get this learning platform out there. We're going to make sure everybody does it and they memorize the 12 questions to the exam. And really that's supplemental and secondary to the live human beings, because the people in the field are usually more kinesthetic learners, hands-on. And the challenge with owners, and I've had this all over the years, someone pays whoever to come in and teach a course. A vendor will do it, but it's like an infomercial at the same time. And they sit down with the person, and the owner expects their employee that has no experience to absorb 100% of that instructor's knowledge and skill set and experience level in one day. And that's not realistic. So we have to keep doing that and layering on the information with the hands-on and the in-person training. And I do think the online part is a very good supplement, especially for the soft skills, but for the technical skills, the humans first, technology second.
I'm in total agreement with you that you gotta have some people behind the scenes to make sure the technology is the right technology, to vet it, to vet the
Yeah.
information. And I think the technology actually exists in a form of agentic AI, which is not your large learning models like ChatGPT, that at times could give you the wrong information, like you said, because it doesn't have like the 100% accuracy, or maybe not even close to that. Now with with agents, they could be trained of like a particular set of data that's being like curated and vetted by a
Sure.
certain group of people or an individual that says this is the right information, then this is not. And then when you start a conversation with an AI agent, the agent will only use that information that's been already vetted and curated. They don't pull from all over the internet. And again, with like a higher chance of like getting false advice. That's also how I see this legacy knowledge that you mentioned, that in 5 years we're gonna have none. It could solve some of that problem. So people like you and I, they're on a way out, could be like harvested for information using technology, and that technology could be stuck in like central brains connected with each other. Then the next person that comes in green to a properties doesn't start from zero. It starts with a collective knowledge of hundreds or maybe thousands of folks just like us that have done it for 20 or 30 or 40 years plus.
Yeah, the thing is, like, for guys like us, we can look at something and we may notice that there's a small slight brown ring on the ceiling, but I'm on an AC call and you're like, okay, that's not supposed to be there. Let's look at that too. And then you realize it was something else. So the small judgments and observations that are made by humans can't be uploaded or downloaded, but we can do our best to put it in the system as much as possible and harvested. It's an interesting word when we're harvested, but yeah. And like, for example, if you take your car to the dealer and they replace a sensor, oxygen sensor, when you go back 3 months later, the sensor's bad again. You go back another 3 months later, the sensor is bad again. But the technician looked it up and the sensor is bad with their technology. What they didn't realize, though, was the airflow is partially blocked. And the cover was moved the sensor too close to the engine block, so it's overheating, and that's why it's going bad every 3 months. So there's small things that we can never account for, but it can account for a lot when it's done really well, and it can be a very good tool to use. But also in the same sentence, I can tell when a paper is written by AI, and I can tell when a human being wrote it. And while they're getting better and closer, you can still, with good discernment, tell the difference. But we need to do something, and I think it's a really good start to download all of that knowledge into the from the legacy or the legendary people in the industry.
In your study, less than 40% of technicians have ever been asked their opinion on technology they use every day. Why are the operators buying software without talking to the people that are actually using it?
You know, that is something that baffles me, and I do have some insights on this. Number one of the biggest complaints out of the survey is there's way too many apps. People are using way too many apps. There's somewhere between 6 and 15 apps. Some of them don't index information from one system to the other, and that is a big concern. And they're spending so much time with apps and upload that they're working more on apps and administratively than they are on the tasks at hand. And what happens is ownership just gets in a focus group, and they get it there in a tunnel, and then they start looking at software. And I had a VP say this to me, and I couldn't believe it. She said, "Why in the world would I ever listen to my maintenance team about technology?" And I thought, okay, well,
Maybe
first of
because
all,
they're using it.
maybe
Maybe
because
because
they're
they're
using
using
it,
it.
but let's fix with your attitude and mindset, because your mindset and attitude is more of a problem than the team is the problem with your technology. And these are the same people, and I hear this all the time. Oh, they can't use technology. They build engines, they build motors, they repair and install HVAC systems, roofs, windows, swimming pools, you name it. You're telling me they can't figure this out? I'm pretty sure they can, and I can guarantee they're going to find loopholes that you never thought of, because you're approaching this from a very different perspective or a different vantage point on the mountain, looking at the same thing. And if there's one thing I've learned in the field, is my goodness, technicians will find a loophole. They will find a way around something, because they have most likely spent the majority of their career not getting what they need and doing the best with what they have. And they're remarkably resourceful, and they learn and look differently. So if you're not asking your technicians or your end users for input on the technology, it's not going to be nearly as good as it could be. And you're setting yourself up for failure. And now the people in the field may not be the most articulate, and they may not be a wordsmith and explain it the way you do analytically, but I'll tell you what, they'll find everything wrong with that system and tell you what should be better.
Whenever someone tells me we don't want our technicians to use technology because they're like not technically inclined, I immediately call bullshit on that.
Yeah.
And here's why. Because every technician has a phone. They have 1,150 apps on their phone. They're using those apps on a daily basis. And also part of my answer to that person that says our people aren't technically inclined. Have you ever seen a training video for Uber? Have you seen one? And the answer is no,
No.
because it doesn't exist. How about this? How about look for the Uber like technology for your teams that works seamlessly and it's frictionless? Put it in their hands and tell me later how your techs are not technically inclined.
See, that's the thing. It's like, and I don't know. I sort of know where this comes from, but historically, very much management views people in the field as not quite as savvy as they are at things. But they'll call them when they need brakes on their car. They'll call them when they need a water heater replaced in their home. They'll call them when they need a condensing unit installed in their home. And the systems that are making these technology, these companies, it's way too complex. If you have to click more than 2 or 3 times, you need to reformat the entire process to navigate through your system. And a lot of the systems came from other industries, and then they would adapt it for ours. And there's a few that are up and coming that are specific, but there's still way too much. If it takes 3 months of training to learn how to use your system, you need to do a better job. just straight up. You can go buy a car on your phone and finance it in less than a couple of hours. And it takes 3 months to learn how to submit work orders and expense reports.
I tell people, well, one of the questions that I ask when vetting, this type of technology is, how long does it take to onboard? And if you can onboard someone within 30 minutes, like that's a problem. Like you don't have a mature enough product, so you're gonna use my employees as lab rats for you to build a product for you, and that's a absolutely no in my book. That's a hard no, right? Or you're upfront and you say, we want a beta test on your company, and not only we gonna give you a discount, but we will give you shares in a company because your employees, hundreds or thousands, are helping us build a decent product. In Instead, I'm hearing companies saying, if you let us use your employees as guinea pigs to extract the information and put them through the pain of struggling with a half-baked product, we will sell it back to you at the discount.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how much of this. And now I will say too, there are companies that just get it right, but I think the entire process really needs to change, and the way that this is done. And if you're not asking your technicians, you're disconnected from them, and they're just going to disassociate from everything because like we don't even get input on this. We use it every day, and I don't want to be a guinea pig. I don't mind testing something, but you're going to make me a guinea pig in this system, and then 3 months later you're going to give a different system for us to pilot, and they're constantly trying these things, and it can be very challenging to work through that while you're trying to get your work done as well. And I understand the owners, I really do, is they're trying. And here's a challenge with onboarding: people want so many variables put into the first few minutes of training. It's like, just give them the basics. This is who we are, this is what we do, this is what we stand for, welcome to the team, you're going to get more training. You can't sit them down for 20 hours of video in their first experience. Now there are companies like Publix, Wegmans, the Marriotts, the Ritz Carltons, the Chick-fil-A's. They put a lot of training into onboarding, and you can't even work with a customer until you spend 2 to 4 weeks with someone, shadowing them in the field. And so you have judgments along all of your experiences, and the implicit, the contextual information gets communicated, and you just can't dump all of this information onto someone in a short amount of time and expect them to retain even part of it.
The number one tool technicians are saying that they need, they don't have, it's a multimeter that typically you could buy it for $30. What does that say about our industry when their tech has to buy their own tools, and they don't have a $30 multimeter to do their job, to properly do their job?
Yeah, so let me say this: if you're short staffed and you're not providing tools, you're the problem. Okay, simple. Now, not so easy. That's a tough pill to swallow. Well, they should have their own tools. Well, how come everyone in the office has a computer, chair, desk, paper, and everything they need, but in the service team you're supposed to show up with your own tools?
Can you
Right?
can you name other industries, like if you're an auto mechanic? Like I saw an ad in a paper, I think it was a joke, right, saying that we're gonna hire like a surgeon, and you gotta bring your own tools. I thought that was hilarious because that sounded exactly like property management. Like, we're hiring surgeons, and bring your own tools. By
Yeah.
the way,
If you go to any service department of any contractor whatsoever, automotive, HVAC, here's all the tools and equipment you need. If you want your own hand tools, you have to get them. But this is what we have, and they're yours. Now, I want to share something because there's a company. Is it okay if I brag on a company and some people? Okay. So let me pull this up. So there's a company in Florida, Arbor Properties, and the owner his name is Gordon, and they have 3 regionals: Andrea, Christina, and Wendy Draper. She's amazing, Wendy Werner. And they started giving all their technicians tool belts, monogrammed, so you can get a bag, a toolbox, or a tool belt. It's yours. Welcome to the team. Here's all your tools. Later on, you get more tools. Later on, you get more tools. Their turnover of employees is less than 15%, and it was significantly higher before this. And the idea that everyone should just show up with what they have and you're still short staffed and can't figure out how to get people, all they did was employ this. And they have a wonderful culture. Everybody has everything they need. You need a tool, you get it. In fact, one of the things that you'll hear from them often is overstaffing is our standard. Giving you more than what you need is our standard. And it's remarkable what they do. And I have other examples too, but if your retention, if your turnover is 20% or higher, you have serious problems in the culture, in the onboarding, and the experience of your employees. That's significantly above the national average. And in multifamily, sometimes it's upwards of 60%. I had an owner call me and he said, I just need to get my turnover below 90%. Adrian, his turnover was 90%, and that was the norm. Simple things like this. So take whatever payroll you have if you're one person short and outfit your crew with everything they need. You're still under budget, and they have more resources than they ever thought that they would get.
The 90% turnover rate, look, it's not an exception. I told, offline, I have leaders of companies, very large companies, like top 10 management companies, top 10 largest, right? They're telling to me in various markets, our turnovers are in a 90%, in a 90% range. This never shows up in a survey. Actually, every time I start writing something maintenance related, and I need a stat for turnover rates, the only one that's available that's on the internet, it's a study from NAE from many, many years ago that says 38% turnover rates. It keeps coming back up, and I get, more and more like worked up about it. Why don't we just do like more current studies? Why don't we invest more in actually people telling the truth? Because, this 38%, it's nowhere in
It's
a
not true.
neighborhood of what we're up against and what we're like. This is a very false narrative here, right? And if we're not starting by telling the truth and telling people that you're happy, like you said, I'm happy if I could like drop it down to like 80 or 70%, then how can we expect to improve?
Yeah, your turnover, just so like a good standard to strive for is below 20%. What I would consider exceptional is 15% or below. Anything above that shouldn't be happening. And the answers are simple, but the simple things are not easy. They want a good work environment. They want a boss that they want to follow and that leads by example. And they need the resources that they need for their job. And here's the thing, because I want to give some solutions too. If you're serious about changing your company, you need to have a good work environment. People need to be treated with respect. And you may think they are, they're not. They're leaving in droves. The way they're spoken to in public, also in private, the way they're treated, and they don't have the resources. And I will say this to the owners, because sometimes you don't realize your technicians are struggling to pay their bills in most cases. I just took my wife and two kids out, and we have three, but only two went out. Hamburgers, French fries, and sodas was $100, and desserts, right? And so you have to, and I'm not saying you have to pay some ridiculous amount, but they have to be able to pay their bills. They have to have the resources that they need, and they just want to be treated with respect. And I will say this, what you deem as I'm treating them with respect is not always received as I am being treated with respect. And this is something that people really don't get. Well, I tell them I respect them. That's not how they feel respected. Your behavior, your interaction, the tone of your voice, the way that you make them or manage their tasks or micromanage. And the successful leaders and managers multiply successful leaders and managers. They multiply successful supervisors. People look forward to going to work. They know that they can bring something up to you and disagree with you and call you out on it, and you will take accountability, and they have zero fear that they're going to lose their job. If you have that type of environment where people can be real with you, now respectful, of course, you're probably going to keep people. But if you just give them company corporate jargon and run them in conversational circles and keep telling them to suck it up, and you just have to work without resources, you're not going to keep people for long.
Mark, the next one is gonna be about a two-sided issue. Well, there's two parts of the same problem, right? The one of the top concerns for owners today this year is that the refrigerant change, right? The A2L refrigerants are coming in. They're coming with a different price tag than every other change we experience. Like 410A, this is a different level type of change than we
Mm-hmm.
experienced with 410A. That was a lot more, I guess, less impactful on the budgets. And what the owners are telling me is that we need information here. Like we need to be educated on like how do we handle this. Our typical way is that we're looking at the property budget and the regional says we're gonna add like a 3% to last year expenses, and that's our this year's expense. Well, this doesn't really fit into that 2-3%
No.
category. It's nowhere near. It's like way bigger than that. So what do we do? What do we do to actually help these owners proactively? First of all, right? It's not proactively anymore because we're already in reactive mode. Like
Yeah.
we're kind of late in the game, but still something's
Okay.
fixed. And secondly, technicians they're saying this refrigerant changes are here, and I'm not getting any training on them. Like, how am I supposed to like handle? Even if I have a contractor putting a system in, how am I supposed to troubleshoot when there's an issue when there's no training available to me? So I would love for you to speak on that and maybe provide some resources and tips.
Yeah. So as someone that was an HVAC contractor, and I have some experience with this and these changes, and very often what people think is, well, this is just going to be a thing that goes away and changes, and it's not. Okay, so everything's going greener, everything's going more environmental. Water heaters are next. That's a whole different conversation. The A2L refrigerants are good refrigerants. Make no mistake. You cannot install new 410 units. You can just find what's left in inventory and do that. The HVAC cost, and I just built a building for myself about slightly over a year ago. 10 tons of air conditioning, which is not that much, was $89,000. So HVAC has gone up about 50% in the past 3 to 4 years, and it's going to continue to climb because the industry wanted greener refrigerants, which I'm a big fan of, but you got it, and you're going to pay for it. Now, the challenge with the change is the refrigerants are slightly flammable, which are really difficult to ignite fully and have an independent flame, but the new ones are also combustible. So now you don't have a choice. You need all new equipment that can handle, that's non-spark, all these new refrigerants. You cannot use the old equipment. You cannot just drop in the refrigerants. I don't care what a salesperson says. There's no such thing as a drop-in refrigerant. You have to clean the line sets. You need different metering devices. You need different capacities. In some cases, you need different ductwork. But when you work with the refrigerants in the field, they're not much more difficult to work with than the old refrigerants. You just need to have new equipment and understand that some of them are flammable and combustible. And there is no training. And a lot of times the trainers that are selected are proctors that don't actually have practical in-field experience. So you have to have someone that really actually understands how to use the refrigerants. But from a management perspective, you are going to have no choice but to buy all new equipment for the new refrigerants coming out. 410A after this year, good luck finding anything in inventory except maybe the electrical components and an occasional coil. So the industry is changing, and it's split on 454 and 32, and they're both good refrigerants. Typically, the smaller systems that you find, like mini splits and whatever, you'll find those have 32. The bigger ones for buildings and larger systems are usually going to be 454. There are some exceptions in the middle, but here's the deal. The challenge is people go, oh, my technician is certified. He or she said they don't need it. Well, here's the deal. In that verbiage, it says you are personally obligated and required to go to training and get updated. So while it may fit under their certification, they have no idea what they're doing in the field. I've been teaching all these courses for 25 years. I have people come there, they've got years of experience with HVAC. They're certified already, and they come in the class once in a while. It's increasing, and like, I don't know anything about this refrigerant, yet I'm supposed to work with it. And I'm getting conflicting messages. And so you have to have resources. You have to get people that actually understand it, not just someone that can give an exam. And so just be cautious with the people that you choose to train your staff. If they're a shortcut kind of person, be very afraid. If they're a person that does it right from the beginning so the installations last, then I would really gravitate towards that person. The thing for me is like I get a little fired up about this because I'm so tired of people saying they care about their employees and they don't train them. We care about our employees, they got to buy their own tools. We care about their employees, they're burnt out, I don't care. What I want to see is, man, we love our employees. Here's the training, here's the tools, here's the equipment. You know what? If you're getting burnt out, you need some time. Recharge your batteries. That's what excellent leadership does. They nudge them, but they also let them recover. They train them, they retrain them, they upskill, they reskill, they give them the skill, and then they put them in the field and they support them. And that's what should be happening.
Mark, back to the back to your study. The lowest score in a whole survey is when it comes to office staff trained to help residents fix basic issues themselves. The gap means techs are getting pulled of what they do on a daily basis of the real work for things a leasing agent could have handled. How do you fix a maintenance problem that starts in a front office?
So the first thing is let's acknowledge that there is one. Okay. And very often you'll hear things like, well, they're in the office, they shouldn't have to do anything but lease apartments. And that's true to some degree. But part of their role, a primary component, is customer service. When someone asks you how to flip a breaker, you should know how. If you're an adult and you don't know how to reset a breaker, reset a garbage disposal, or lock a window, I don't even know what to say, truly, right? Or where the disconnect is. So let's say there's a flood in an apartment and the staff is gone. You don't know how to turn the main valve off in an apartment or a home. There's no excuse for that. So I think what we can do is take people in the office together. And here's the thing, and you'll see this happen, is when people they say, oh, we want to cross train, they dump unwanted tasks on each other to almost like punish them, to show them that they should value that role more, instead of having people go together, learn together, and say, this is how we can help each other. So here's how you reset a breaker 3 times. And I only do it 3 times because then I know that you'll reset the spring, because otherwise people just push it. Here's where the button is for the disposer. Here's where the valve is to turn the water off the whole apartment. Here's where the breaker panel is outside. Those are not difficult things. I've actually gone into a property and asked the person, like, what type of heating systems they have. This is what I was told. The kind that makes heat. And I thought, oh my goodness, that was not the answer I'm looking for. I just want to know if it's gas, if it's a heat pump. I'm just trying to figure it out in my mind. And I got it like sort of sarcastically. And so we need to have the office just help with simple things. The other thing that you can do, and there's people that have ideas, but you can have in their system where they submit a work order, they can watch short little videos. You can put codes on something to scan. This is how you do it. There's all sorts of ways to work around this. You'll never eliminate it 100%, but you could at least work on it. But here's the deal. The office staff should be eager to help the service team. The service team should be eager to help the office team. And if they're not, you have a leadership issue, poor leadership. You have a culture issue, a poor culture that's dysfunctional, because a functional team is going to say, okay, if I can help, I will. Now, if I don't have the time, I'll let you know. But if there's a chance and I can help you in 30 seconds, I'm going to do it. And so I think that starts with a tone of ownership, the execution and example behaviorally of the management, all the way down to the field where people knock on doors.
Honestly, I'm really asking you here if you would entertain maybe doing like a second episode maybe next month to cover. There's a lot that has been expressed in a survey, like quotes from actual technicians, that I like your reaction on it, because I think those are incredibly relevant. What is like a takeaway from this particular conversation and the study? Just something to leave the audience with.
So here's a takeaway. The team from the survey has been grossly overlooked. grossly underestimated and grossly under-equipped. And if you're a leader or a manager that wants a team that stays, that shows up, like actually physically, mentally shows up, we have to create a better work environment. You have to give them the tools and resources. You have to provide a work environment where people can't wait to tell their friends this is a great place to work. And the top three things that people want is a better environment overall. They want better treatment from everyone that they work with, and they want resources to do so. And I'm telling you, if you change these three things, it will drastically improve your business, which will drastically improve your bottom line. If you want to make more money, you have to give the people in the field what they need to do their jobs and treat them in a way that holds them accountable, yet gives them enough enjoyment to look forward to coming to work and going the extra mile. And I will say this, you don't just tell your team what the culture is. That comes from the people in the field by the generally accepted practices and norms, and it will start to shape itself. And then you have to navigate that in a way. And the analogy I like is if you garden at all, and I do for fun, you have to grow soil. The medium in which things grow is more important than growing the single thing itself. So your company will not be for everybody, and that's okay. But you want it to be for the people that you want on your team. And that's where those people have to grow. So that's the recommendation that I give to all of the owners. And if you want more resources, just talk to me or Adrian, and we'll give you a ton of resources, insights. And it is our goal to help you run a better business, a better service department, and make everyone on the team happier.
Mark, it's been great having you on. I really love for us to pick up the conversation where we left off. Let's just plan for next episode. A lot more to unpack from the survey, from what you're seeing in a few, and from your vast experience. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you very much.